Hollow Creek was a small, unremarkable town nestled deep in the woods, where life moved slowly, and everyone knew each other. But beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful place lurked a darkness that the townsfolk rarely spoke of: a man named Thomas Grady. Thomas had lived in Hollow Creek his entire life, but he was not well liked. He was a loner, a man of few words, who kept to himself in a rundown cabin on the outskirts of town. Rumors swirled about him, whispered in hushed tones how he had a cruel streak, how he was not to be trusted. But the most disturbing rumors were about what he did to animals. Thomas had a twisted fascination with the creatures of the forest. He was known to set traps in the woods, cruel, jagged contraptions designed not just to catch, but to maim. It wasn't enough for him to hunt; he needed to see the animals suffer. Those who ventured near his cabin would sometimes hear the agonized cries of animals coming from within, but no one dared to investigate. The townspeople turned a blind eye to Thomas's actions, convincing themselves it was better not to get involved. But over time, the wildlife around Hollow Creek began to dwindle. The once vibrant woods grew eerily silent, as if the animals themselves knew to avoid the area near Thomas's cabin. One day, a young girl named Lily, who loved exploring the woods, came across a bloodied trail leading deeper into the forest. Curious and unafraid, she followed it, her heart pounding as she realized the trail led straight to Thomas's cabin. The sight that awaited her there would haunt her forever. In the clearing behind the cabin, she found a horrific scene: a pile of animal carcasses, some barely recognizable, their bodies twisted and broken. Flies buzzed around the decomposing remains, and the stench of death was overwhelming. But it wasn't just the sight of the dead animals that terrified her; it was the fact that Thomas was standing there, watching her. His eyes were cold, devoid of any emotion, as he held a bloodied knife in his hand. For a moment, they locked eyes, and Lily felt a wave of pure fear wash over her. Without a word, she turned and ran as fast as she could, never looking back. That night, Lily told her parents what she had seen, and the news spread through the town like wildfire. The townspeople were horrified, but fear kept them from confronting Thomas directly. Instead, they reported the matter to the authorities. The sheriff, an old man who had known Thomas since they were children, reluctantly agreed to investigate. He arrived at Thomas's cabin the next morning, accompanied by a few deputies. What they found confirmed the worst of the rumors. The yard was littered with the remains of countless animals, some of which had clearly been tortured before they died. When they entered the cabin, they found Thomas sitting at a table, calmly eating breakfast as if nothing was out of the ordinary. The sheriff, sickened by what he had seen, demanded that Thomas explain himself. Thomas merely looked up at them, a chilling smile spreading across his face. "They were weak," he said simply. "I did what needed to be done." The sheriff, disgusted and horrified, placed Thomas under arrest. But as they led him out of the cabin, something strange happened. The wind picked up, howling through the trees, and the sky darkened unnaturally. The animals that had once fled the area began to emerge from the woods: deer, birds, even predators like wolves and bears. They surrounded the cabin, their eyes locked on Thomas, as if they were waiting for something. The deputies, unnerved, urged the sheriff to hurry, but Thomas stopped dead in his tracks. He stared at the animals, his face contorting with rage. "You think you can judge me?" he snarled. "I am the hunter. I am." Before he could finish, the animals attacked. The wolves tore into him, the birds pecked at his eyes, and the bears crushed his bones. The sheriff and his deputies could only watch in horror as the man was torn apart by the very creatures he had tormented. When it was over, there was nothing left of Thomas Grady but a blood-stained patch of earth. The townspeople were relieved when they heard of Thomas's death, but they were also deeply unsettled. The woods around Hollow Creek, once silent and empty, were now filled with the sounds of life again. But it was different now. The animals seemed to watch the town with a newfound intelligence, as if they were always aware, always waiting. And from that day forward, the people of Hollow Creek knew to respect the creatures of the forest, for they had seen what could happen when nature decided to strike back. The legend of the Beast of Hollow Creek grew, a warning to all who might forget the power of the wild and the darkness that can reside within a human soul.